Snow was falling gently from the dark sky, covering the alien marketplace in a white blanket. The air was sharp and cold, and every breath turned into mist. In the middle of the crowd, one young alien girl stood alone, chained and weak. Her clothes were torn, her hair was tangled, and her eyes looked empty. She had been returned again. Another family had given up on her. Their words still echoed in her ears. She is too broken. She cannot stay with us. They had left her standing in the snow, walking away without a single look back. Around her, other aliens whispered. Some shook their heads, others turned away in disgust. She is cursed, one said. Dangerous, said another. Not fit for any home. The girl lowered her head, her heart heavy. She had heard these words many times before. Every time someone took her in, they soon sent her away. No one wanted her. She was passed around like an object and then thrown out again and again. Dozens of times this had happened. And now, standing alone in the snow, she wondered if she would ever belong anywhere. The marketplace lights flickered. Voices grew louder as merchants shouted about their goods, food, weapons, warm clothes, all for trade. But no one offered her shelter. No one offered her kindness. To them, she was not worth the trouble. Her legs trembled as she tried to walk. The chains on her wrists rattled, reminding her of her past. She had been bound too long, treated like something dangerous. She wanted to scream, but her voice was broken too. Only silence came out. Children pointed at her, their parents quickly pulling them away. Some laughed cruelly, others looked afraid. The girl wrapped her thin arms around herself, trying to stay warm. Her body shook from the cold. She could not remember the last time she felt safe. As she walked through the snow, memories returned. Each family that once promised her a place had ended the same way. At first, they tried to accept her. They gave her food, sometimes even a bed. But soon they grew afraid of her silence, her strange scars, her empty eyes. They began to see her as a burden. Then one day they would push her out and she would find herself in the snow again, alone. Her heart carried too many rejections. Too many doors closed on her face. She began to believe the whispers. Maybe she was cursed. Maybe she was not meant for love. The night grew colder. The snow fell harder. Her thin body could not stand much longer. She collapsed near an old wall, pulling her knees to her chest. Her lips trembled as she whispered to herself, "Why am I not good enough?" Her tears froze on her cheeks. From the shadows, eyes watched her. A group of aliens stood together, whispering, "That one again," one said. "No home will ever keep her," another replied. They laughed and walked away, leaving her to freeze. But there was something different about this night, something she did not see. Not far from the marketplace, in a small human outpost, a man looked out into the storm. His gaze fell on her figure in the snow, fragile and broken. He wondered why she was there, why no one helped her. For now she did not know he existed. She only knew the pain of rejection. She only knew the cold. Her eyelids grew heavy, her body weaker. The snow began to cover her like a blanket. The world around her blurred. The last thing she thought before slipping into half-sleep was the same question she always asked. Why does no one want me? The night carried her sorrow. The wind howled through the empty streets. The chains on her wrists were the only music in the silence. She was lost, unwanted, forgotten, and yet her story was only beginning. Because soon, someone would step forward, someone different, someone who would not see her as broken. But tonight, as the snow buried her deeper, she could not believe such a thing was possible. She waited for the end. She expected only more rejection. She thought no one would ever speak the words she longed to hear. But fate was moving quietly, preparing to change everything. The sound of heavy engines shook the night sky. A large alien ship hovered above the snowy ground, its lights cutting through the storm. The girl stood weakly in the cold, her wrists still chained. Her thin body trembled as the ramp of the ship lowered. Two guards dragged her forward. Their faces showed no emotion. She tried to walk on her own, but her legs were too weak. They pushed her out roughly, and she fell to her knees in the snow. The captain's voice was sharp and cruel. "Take her back. We cannot keep her. She is nothing but trouble." His words echoed like thunder. The girl's heart sank even deeper. She had been returned again. She lifted her head slowly. The ship's bright lights burned her tired eyes. She wanted to speak, to beg, but her voice was lost. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. She only watched as the ramp closed and the engines roared. The ship rose higher, leaving her behind once more. The snow whipped around her face, covering the fresh scars on her skin. She hugged herself, her body shivering. She whispered in her heart, "This is the last time. I cannot take more." For a moment, the world was silent. Only the storm spoke. Her footprints in the snow were shallow, soon to be erased by the wind. Her story felt erased too. Every return carved a deeper wound inside her. She remembered each family, each place, each time she was promised care, and each time she was thrown back into the cold. Some said she was cursed, some said she was too weak, others whispered she carried bad luck. But no one ever asked what she carried in her heart. As she walked through the snow, her chains rattled like cruel music. They were not just metal, they were memories. They held the sound of every rejection, every door that closed, every cruel laugh. She wanted to break free, but the weight of her past was heavy. The marketplace she once knew was far behind. Now she wandered near the edges of a human outpost. The lights in the distance glowed faintly through the storm. Her steps slowed, her body ready to collapse. She did not know that eyes were watching. From a small cabin window, a human man saw her. His breath froze on the glass as he leaned closer. He had heard rumors of the unwanted alien girl. He had seen her face once from afar, always in chains, always alone, and now she was there, struggling through the snow like a ghost. He frowned. His heart asked a question his mind could not answer. Why is she always returned? The other colonists had told stories, dark tales that made her sound dangerous, but the man did not see danger. He only saw pain. The girl stumbled. Her knees hit the frozen ground. She pressed her hands into the snow, trying to rise, but her body gave way. Her long hair fell across her face, wet and heavy. She lay still, waiting for the storm to take her. The human man stepped outside. The wind slapped his face. His boots crunched against the snow as he walked closer. For a moment he hesitated. His people warned him not to get involved. They said she was trouble. They said no home could hold her. But as he looked at her broken figure, he could not turn away. The girl sensed movement. She lifted her head weakly, her vision blurred, but she saw a shape approaching, tall and firm. For a heartbeat, she thought it was another guard come to drag her back. Her heart raced with fear. But the figure stopped and spoke. His voice was calm, human. "You should not be out here alone." The words sounded strange to her ears. No one had spoken to her with such softness in a long time. She blinked, trying to understand, but she could not reply. She was too weak. The man bent down. His eyes met hers. He saw fear, but also something else, an unspoken cry for help. He sighed deeply, wrapping his coat around her shoulders. Her body shivered at the sudden warmth. "Come," he said simply. He lifted her carefully into his arms. She felt small and weightless. Her chains clinked as he carried her. The sound echoed in the storm. Inside his cabin, the fire burned low. He laid her near the warmth. Her eyes fluttered. Her lips trembled. She looked at him with confusion. No one had ever brought her inside before. Not without fear, not without disgust. For the first time, she was not left outside, not thrown back, not abandoned, but her mind could not believe it. Her heart whispered, "He will send me away too." The human studied her silently. He saw her scars, her trembling hands, her broken spirit, and something stirred in him, something he had never felt for any other being. He did not see a curse. He saw someone who needed a place. The girl closed her eyes slowly. Half of her expected to wake up outside in the snow again, but the warmth of the fire touched her skin. Her chains lay heavy on the floor, and for the first time in her long journey of rejection, she was not alone. The storm outside howled like a living beast. The cabin shook under the weight of the wind. Inside, the fire crackled softly, fighting the cold. The alien girl lay wrapped in a blanket, her body weak, her eyes half closed. The human man sat across from her. His rough hands rested on his knees. His eyes never left her face. He had seen many things in his life, but nothing like her. She looked fragile, like glass that might shatter with the slightest touch. Yet behind her weakness, he sensed a strange strength, the strength of someone who had survived too much. He wondered how many winters she had endured alone, how many doors had closed in her face, how many cruel voices had broken her spirit. He had heard the stories before. The colonists often whispered about the unwanted one. They said she brought bad luck. They said families took her in but always returned her. They said she was cursed. But sitting here, watching her breathe faintly by the fire, he saw none of that. He only saw a young soul drowning in silence. The girl stirred slightly. Her chains clinked as she moved. She opened her eyes. Her gaze met his. For a moment, time froze. She expected anger or maybe fear. That was always the pattern. Whenever someone looked at her, they saw only her flaws. But his eyes were different, calm, steady, almost kind. She looked away quickly, pulling the blanket tighter around her. Her body trembled. She whispered something, but her voice was too soft. The words were lost in the crackle of the fire. The man leaned forward. "What did you say?" he asked gently. Her lips trembled. She shook her head. She could not ask. She could not believe he would listen. He sighed and sat back. He did not press her. Instead, he added more wood to the fire. The flames grew brighter, filling the room with light and warmth. The girl stared at the fire. Her mind was heavy with doubt. This place felt safe, but safety never lasted. She had been taken in before, only to be pushed away again. Every kindness was temporary. Every hand that reached for her soon turned to shove her out. So she waited. She sat quietly, prepared for rejection. In her heart, she believed he would send her away in the morning. The night passed slowly. The storm outside raged on, but inside, the man stayed awake, watching. His thoughts wrestled with questions. Why had she been returned so many times? Was it truly her fault, or the cruelty of those who never gave her a chance? When dawn finally came, pale light touched the cabin walls. The girl was already awake. She sat on the edge of the bed, the blanket folded neatly beside her. Her eyes were empty. She was ready to leave. The man entered the room quietly. He carried a small tray. On it was a bowl of warm soup and a piece of bread. He placed it on the table near her. "Eat," he said simply. The girl froze. Her hands shook. She stared at the food like it was a trap. In her experience, kindness was always followed by cruelty. Still, hunger pulled at her. Slowly, she reached for the bowl. The first spoonful warmed her cold body. Her lips trembled as she swallowed. She had not tasted warmth like this in a long time. She ate slowly, her eyes never leaving his. The man smiled faintly. "Good," he said. His voice carried no anger, no harshness, only a quiet peace. The girl lowered her gaze. She whispered, "You will send me away." Her words were broken, almost too soft to hear. The man frowned. "Why would I do that?" Her eyes filled with tears. "Everyone does," she said. Her voice cracked. "They always send me back." For a moment, silence filled the cabin. The fire popped softly. The man looked at her with steady eyes. "I am not everyone," he said. The girl's heart raced. She did not know if she could believe him. His words sounded like a promise, and promises had always been lies. But something in his voice, something in his eyes, felt different. She turned her face away, wiping her tears. She did not want him to see her hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope always broke her heart. The man stood and stepped outside. He looked at the snow-covered world. He thought of the whispers, the warnings, the fear others had of her. But he also thought of her eyes, filled with quiet suffering, and he made a decision. When he returned inside, the girl was still sitting quietly. He placed more wood on the fire and said, "You can stay here if you want." The words hit her like thunder. Her breath caught. She looked at him in shock. For a moment she could not move. Her mind screamed that she must have heard wrong. But his face was calm, his voice steady. He meant it. Her lips parted, but no words came. Her heart shook inside her chest. She had waited her whole life to hear such words, and now, spoken so simply, they felt unreal. The human man sat down again. He did not look at her like she was broken. He did not look at her like a curse. He only looked at her as someone who belonged here. And for the first time in her life, the unwanted girl felt a flicker of something she had never dared to feel before. Hope. The morning sun rose weakly over the snowy land. Pale light spilled through the cabin window. The girl sat silently near the fire, her thin hands folded on her lap. She had not slept much. Her heart still feared the same end as always. Every time before, kindness lasted only for a moment. A meal, a blanket, maybe a smile, then rejection, then the cold. She told herself this would be no different. He would send her away. It was only a matter of time. When the door opened, her body stiffened. The human man stepped inside, carrying a small bundle of wood. His boots left a trail of snow on the floor. He glanced at her quietly, his eyes steady. The girl lowered her head. She was ready for his words, ready to hear, "You cannot stay." But instead, his voice was calm. "Breakfast is ready. Sit." Her heart skipped. The simple words struck her harder than any blow. She looked at him, unsure if she had heard right. She whispered, "For me." He nodded, placing bread and a warm drink on the table. "Yes, for you." Her hands trembled as she reached for the food. She ate slowly, afraid the moment would vanish, afraid he would snatch it away, but he only watched, quiet, patient. As she finished, she tried to rise and take the bowl to the corner. She wanted to clean it, to prove her worth, but her weak hands slipped. The bowl slipped too, falling to the floor with a sharp crack. Her whole body froze, her eyes widened in fear. Memories of anger filled her mind, shouts, punishments, rejection. In her heart she braced for the same. She waited for his face to twist with rage, but the man did not shout. He crouched, picking up the broken pieces. His voice was calm. It is only a bowl." Her lips parted in disbelief. She whispered, "You are not angry." He shook his head. "Why would I be angry at you for this?" His tone was so steady it confused her. She pulled the blanket tighter around her. Her chest rose and fell quickly. She whispered again, "Others became angry. They sent me away." His eyes softened. "I am not them." Her heart shook at his words. She wanted to believe him, but fear still sat heavy inside. She lowered her head, afraid to meet his eyes. The day passed slowly. She watched him work around the cabin, fixing small things, chopping wood, preparing food. He moved with quiet strength, never once raising his voice, never once looking at her with the eyes of rejection. Still, she could not trust so easily. Every time he left the room, she whispered to herself, "He will send me away soon." When he stepped back inside, her shoulders tensed, expecting the words, but they never came. In the evening, he set another bowl of soup before her. She stared at it, then at him. Her lips trembled. "Why do you feed me?" He paused, then answered simply, "Because you are hungry." The answer shook her. It was too simple, too honest. She wanted to ask more, but the words stuck in her throat. She ate quietly, her mind filled with questions she could not ask. Later, she sat by the fire. Her eyes followed the flames. The warmth touched her skin. She thought of all the families before, the doors slammed shut, the cruel hands pushing her away. None of them had given her this much time, this much peace. Her heart whispered, "Maybe this place is different." But her fear whispered louder, "Do not trust, you will be hurt again." The man noticed her silence. He sat down nearby. "You are safe here," he said softly. Her eyes filled with tears. She shook her head. "Safe does not last." Her voice cracked. "Safe always ends." His chest tightened at her words. He saw the truth of her pain, scars deeper than skin. He leaned forward. "Then let us see if it can last this time." Her tears slipped down her cheeks. She wanted to believe him, but doubt was heavy. She whispered, "Why me?" He looked at her, steady. "Because you deserve it." The words sank deep. They felt unreal. No one had ever said such things to her. She clutched the blanket to her chest, her heart trembling with a strange new feeling. Hope. That night, she lay near the fire again. The storm outside had calmed, but inside her mind the storm still raged. She told herself she should not trust him. She told herself she should prepare to be left again. But another voice, soft and fragile, whispered, "Maybe he will not leave. Maybe he is different." She closed her eyes slowly, her body wrapped in warmth, her chains heavy but no longer cold. And for the first time in her life, she felt the smallest seed of trust beginning to grow. The cabin was quiet. Only the fire's soft crackle filled the air. The girl sat near the flames, wrapped in the blanket he had given her. Her eyes still carried doubt, but they also carried something new, a small light of trust. The human man worked at the table, repairing a tool with steady hands. His face was calm, but his mind was not. He knew the world outside would not stay silent forever. He knew others might come. The girl lowered her head, staring at the chains on her wrists. They still marked her as unwanted. They still reminded her of every rejection. She whispered softly, "This cannot last." Her voice was thin, almost lost in the fire's sound. The man looked at her. "Why do you say that?" She shook her head. "Because they always come back for me. They always drag me away. No one can stop them." Her words carried the weight of truth. He saw her trembling hands, her broken spirit. But he also felt something deep inside himself, a promise forming quietly. The night grew darker. The wind outside carried strange noises. The girl tensed, her ears sharper than his. She whispered, "They are coming." Moments later, shadows moved outside the window. The crunch of heavy boots pressed into the snow. Voices called out, harsh and commanding, "Open the door, return her to us." Her body shook, her eyes filled with fear. She pulled the blanket tighter. "See, they found me. You must send me out. It is the only way to keep yourself safe." The man stood slowly, his face firm, his voice steady. "No, I will not." The pounding on the door grew louder. The voices shouted again. "She is cursed. She does not belong here. Hand her over or face the cost." The girl cried out, "Please let me go. They will hurt you." He turned to her, his eyes calm, his voice strong. "I will not give you back." Her breath caught. Her heart raced. No one had ever spoken those words for her. No one had ever chosen her over safety. Tears blurred her vision as the door shook under the pounding fists. The man reached for his weapon, not with fear but with resolve. He opened the door just enough to stand in the frame, his figure blocking the cold wind. His eyes met the aliens outside. She stays here, he said. The aliens hissed in anger. You do not understand. She brings danger. She destroys every home. She cannot be kept. But the man did not move. His voice was iron. Then this home will not be like the others. She stays. The aliens snarled. Some threatened, some warned. But after long moments of tension, they stepped back into the snow, their voices fading into the storm, their shadows vanishing. The door closed with a heavy thud. Silence returned. The fire crackled softly again. The girl sat frozen, her eyes wide, her heart pounding. She whispered, Why did you not send me away? He placed his weapon aside, his eyes steady. Because you deserve to stay. Because you are not broken. Her tears fell freely now. Her body shook not from fear, but from the force of emotions too heavy to carry. She pressed her hands to her chest, whispering, No one ever said that before. He sat near her, his voice gentle. Then let this be the first time, and not the last. The girl leaned against the wall, her mind spinning. She wanted to believe him, but part of her heart still whispered doubt, yet she could not deny the truth of what she had seen. For the first time, someone had stood in front of her, not against her. The night passed slowly. She lay near the fire, still trembling, but her heart carried new warmth. The memory of his words echoed again and again. She stays here. When dawn broke, the snow outside was untouched. The aliens were gone. The cabin stood strong. The girl sat up, her chains heavy on her wrists. She touched them, whispering softly, Am I truly safe? The man nodded. You are safe here. Her lips trembled. Her voice cracked. Safe never lasted before. He looked at her with calm eyes. Then we will make it last this time. She lowered her gaze. Her tears fell silently. She wanted to believe. Her heart begged to believe, but fear still lived inside her. Still the fire's warmth, his voice, his presence. They wrapped around her like a shield. For the first time in her long life, she had not been returned, not been abandoned, not been thrown back into the snow. For the first time, she had someone who stood between her and the world. And though fear whispered in her heart, another voice, quiet and fragile, began to grow louder. Hope. The days after the night of fear passed quietly. The snow still fell outside, but inside the cabin, there was warmth. The fire burned, the walls stood firm, and for the first time, the alien girl began to feel something unfamiliar. She sat near the fire, watching the man as he worked. He fixed tools, chopped wood, cooked meals. His movements were calm and steady, never rushed, never harsh. She studied him silently, wondering why he was so different. Her chains still hung from her wrists, heavy reminders of her past. She touched them often, whispering to herself, I am not free. Yet when she looked at him, she felt less like a prisoner. One evening, as the storm roared outside, she whispered softly, Why did you not return me? Her voice cracked, fragile, as though she feared the answer. The man looked at her from across the fire, his eyes steady. Because you are not something to return. Her breath caught, her hands trembled, but everyone did. They all gave me back. They said I was broken. They said I could not stay. His voice grew firm, yet gentle. They were wrong. You are not broken. You are alive, and that is enough. Her heart shook at his words, tears welled in her eyes. She pressed a hand against her chest, the weight of his kindness almost too heavy to bear. The silence between them was warm. She wanted to speak more, but her voice failed, so she only sat, staring at the flames, letting his words sink deep. Days turned into nights, and nights into days. The girl began to change in small ways. At first, she barely spoke, only whispers. But slowly, her words grew clearer. She asked simple questions. What are you cooking? Why do you chop wood this way? The man answered each question with patience. He never mocked her, never pushed her away. He treated her voice as if it mattered, and to her, it was a strange gift. One afternoon, she tried to help him carry wood. Her arms were weak, the logs too heavy. She stumbled, and the wood fell into the snow. She froze, fear racing through her, expecting anger, but the man only smiled faintly. You tried, that is enough, he said. He picked up the wood himself, his voice calm. The girl stared at him, confused. Others punished me when I failed, she whispered. I am not them, he replied, his words steady like the ground beneath her feet. She carried those words in her heart. Each time she feared rejection, she remembered, I am not them. The bond between them grew quietly, like fire spreading through dry wood. She began to laugh softly, the sound weak but real. He listened with quiet joy, for her laughter was rare like sunlight breaking through clouds. At night, when she lay near the fire, she whispered to herself, He does not see me as broken. The thought wrapped around her like another blanket. It was strange, almost frightening, to feel hope. One night, as the wind howled outside, she turned to him and asked, "Will you always let me stay?" Her eyes were wide, filled with fear and longing. The man looked at her, his face calm. "As long as you wish to stay." Her lips parted. She shook her head. "No one ever let me choose." "You can choose here," he said firmly. Her tears fell freely. She covered her face, whispering, "Why do you give me this? Why do you give me what no one else did?" His answer was simple, but it carried weight. "Because you deserve it." The words struck her heart, stronger than chains, stronger than fear. She lowered her hands slowly, her eyes filled with trembling light. The fire flickered between them, casting shadows on the walls. She looked at him for a long time, her lips trembling. Then she whispered, "Thank you." It was the first time she had said those words to anyone without fear. The man nodded quietly. He did not need more. The bond was already growing. In the days that followed, she began to help more. She learned to stir the pot over the fire, to fold the blankets neatly, to place wood carefully beside the hearth. Each small act gave her strength. Each small act reminded her she belonged. And each night, she whispered softly to herself, "I am not broken." Her voice grew stronger, her eyes brighter, and the man watched silently, proud, never rushing her, never forcing her. Their bond was not built on grand words or loud promises. It was built on quiet moments, gentle acts, and steady truth. The girl had been returned dozens of times before, but here, in this cabin, with this human, she was finally learning what it meant to stay, and though fear still lingered in her heart, another feeling grew stronger every day. Trust. The winter storm outside grew stronger each day. The winds howled across the frozen land, yet inside the cabin, the fire burned bright. Its warmth wrapped the girl in safety she had never known. She sat by the window, watching the snow fall. Her chains still lay on her wrists, but now they felt lighter. Not because they had changed, but because her heart had. She whispered softly, "This place does not feel like a prison." The man glanced at her from across the room, his hands busy fixing a broken chair. He smiled faintly. "It is not a prison. It is your home." Her breath caught. The word home felt strange on her tongue. She had never owned such a word. Every place she stayed before was only temporary, cold walls that pushed her away. But now, hearing him speak it, her heart trembled. That night, the storm outside roared like a beast. The wind slammed against the walls, the cabin shook. But inside, the fire glowed, and the man worked to make the shelter stronger. The girl watched him, worry in her eyes. "Why do you fight the storm so much?" she asked. He looked at her, his eyes calm. "Because I want this place to stand. I want it to protect you." Her lips trembled. "No one ever built anything for me." "Then this will be the first time," he said simply, his voice steady as the walls he repaired. She pressed a hand against her chest. Her tears fell softly. The warmth in her heart grew. She whispered to herself, "Maybe I can belong here." The days passed, and the bond between them deepened. She began to speak more, her voice fragile but growing. She even smiled sometimes, the man noticed. And though he said little, his eyes carried quiet joy. One evening she sat by the fire, her eyes following the flames. She whispered, "All my life I was returned, dozens of times. No one wanted me. They all called me broke and cursed weak." Her voice cracked, heavy with memory. The man sat beside her. His voice was firm but gentle. "They were blind. They did not see you, but I do, and I will not return you." Her tears fell. She covered her face, whispering, "Why me? Why do you choose me?" He placed a hand lightly on her shoulder. "Because you are more than they ever saw. You are not broken. You are enough." His words struck her heart like fire against ice. For years, rejection had buried her in cold despair, but his voice melted it piece by piece. She looked at him through her tears, and for the first time, she truly believed. That night, she whispered to herself as she drifted to sleep, "I am not broken. I am not unwanted. I am home." The storm raged on for days, testing the walls of the cabin. But each time the wind roared, the fire inside glowed brighter. The man's steady presence kept her safe. His voice reminded her she was no longer alone. One morning, she stepped outside. The storm had passed. The world was white and silent. Snow covered the ground like a blanket. The sky was clear. She looked up at the stars still faint in the morning light. Her breath rose in mist. Her heart beat strong. She whispered to the sky. I was returned dozens of times, but this time I will not leave. Behind her, the man stood quietly, watching. He did not need to speak. She already knew his presence was enough. She turned back toward the cabin, toward the fire, toward the only place that had not cast her out. Her lips curved into a small, fragile smile. Inside, she placed her hands on the chains. For the first time, she did not see them as marks of rejection. She saw them as scars of survival. She whispered, "These chains do not define me. This home does." The man nodded. "One day we will remove them, but even now you are free." Her heart swelled. She had never known freedom, never known love, never known safety. But now, all three lived inside these walls, inside this bond, inside this home. The girl, once unwanted, once returned again and again, had found something no alien had given her, no world had offered her. She had found the home she never had, and for the first time, she no longer feared tomorrow, because she knew she was not broken, she was not cursed, she was not alone, she was wanted, she was home.